So, very interesting perspectives. A lot on the safety side, a lot on where we look at cockpit electronics happening, how we're seeing security being a key aspect. Reminds me of that recent hack that happened somewhere, I think in Europe, where a guy just stands next to you and uses it to transmit your keyless entry data next to the car, and has been opening cars and hacking it. So I mean, we're going to get these new security challenges every day, and the complexity is going to probably grow 10x as we start to get the level of connectivity and access to a lot more sensors and data and controls within vehicles. So the panel being trying to see what we can do in India, I thought the first question we could put across is, everyone's been talking a lot of made in India. I think from an electronics perspective, design in India is very key. Design of the solutions from scratch. And so the value add shouldn't be in just putting together the final bits and pieces, but actually creating the product, because I think the cost and performance and everything controls come a lot more as you look at it. So the made in India needs to be design and made in India. And this is something that I think we're, one of the panelists alluded to, that we're not yet, we got to think of all the way to the end of the line, and we're not thinking right through on this aspect. So what would the question to me be, what would we need to build the ecosystem to allow us to get made in India to a stronger design in India from each of your perspectives? So why don't we start from this side here?
Yeah, having been running a small company for 10 years, and some of that experience has been on electronics manufacturing for a tablet that came out of our company. So I can talk firsthand about what it takes to succeed as a hardware product, be it in automotive or elsewhere. Unfortunately, that product did not really succeed for us, but it gave me a lot of learning on what it takes to succeed in the hardware industry. I would think primarily the business case, I was talking to Nambi earlier, the business case for the hardware product has to be there. So do you have a differentiator that in the electronics industry can compete with the global biggies because of the differentiator and succeed in the Indian market? I think that is the key. So can you have a innovation? Do you have local specific features? In cars, it's possible more than, say, in cell phones. But do you have those kinds of things? Can you design them in India so that you have the ability to take on the biggies and succeed? You cannot compete on cost. They are making for the whole world. You're making for one country in India. So you have to find the differentiator and be able to use that as your USP, as your leverage to succeed. And design in India is absolutely essential for that. Otherwise, you're competing on cost, which is a hard game.
Thanks. Ashok, your thoughts?
Designing in India is a very, very foremost and critical element for the Make in India concept, actually. And the first thing which is very important is to have the awareness that if you look at any product, it is landed price which the consumer is paying, 50% of that element is in the design, R&D, and IPR. That's where it starts, actually. That is a competitive advantage. And with this awareness, then we need to look at how we do the innovations. Today, the automotive is not only this body of steel and tires and a seat and the engine. It's much more than that. And if you follow the trend, more than 90% of the innovation in automotive today is driven by electronics. And that gives an incredible opportunity for the technology people like you, because now you have the electronics, semiconductors, and software, all three. Those can really contribute to this design element. And with a lot of automation tools and support system that is available, the design in India can become a reality. But as I mentioned, the foremost is very, very important is to know that this really contributes to a major chunk of any product cost. Effectively utilize the available ecosystem. And there are tons of companies and many companies available here, those can support while these products are getting designed and they are productized, actually.
Thanks so much. Amit, could we have your thoughts?
Yeah. So there are aspects, as we've seen about manufacturing and about design. If you look at manufacturing, I think very, very important because the landed cost, as Ashok was mentioning, is what matters the most. Now, are we the most efficient even after manufacturing? I know my company started manufacturing audios and infotainments years back, and we were the first to start manufacturing right from a PCB level to an assembly when everybody else was importing them here. And yes, it's it's a huge advantage when you try and manufacture locally. Yeah, the key advantage is if you really look at automotive electronics, as I mentioned, it's changing so fast. And with the with the pace of change that's happening, it's very important that you're able to control your inventories, you're able to control the time it takes to get it into production and have that as minimum as possible. But are we the most efficient manufacturing here in India? No. Because 95% of the electronic components that I still get to manufacture any automotive electronics which I use here in India is still imported. And with the way the forex rates increase, it becomes a huge challenge, because as far as if you look at it from an OE perspective, their perspective is very clear. The end consumer is not going to pay more for the same electronics that he's getting, even if the forex rate moves up by 10-15%, he's still going to pay you as he would normally pay. So it is a huge challenge to still manufacture in India today until we have the silicon and the fab manufacturers move into India. And that really is going to drive what kind of volumes we see and make a relevant business case for them to move here. So yeah, a whole lot about market and volume. So that's from the manufacturing side. From the design side, I think we are already there. I mean, there's huge amount of design that's happening already. I know for at least the tier ones that are here, on the dais, I know for Delphi, for Visteon, for Bosch, we have huge engineering centers here. We have, nearly 60% of our global software gets written here. Be it a BMW car for Europe or be a GM car in the US, all the software gets written here in India. So we have engineers, we have the skill set that know, which know about technology, which is relevant, which is advanced, and know the local aspects and can fine tune. So every single product that I actually sell in India is not a global platform. We've from scratch actually developed platforms that are relevant for India, which are feature rich, but may not be as complex, and are well suited and are more frugal when you compare them to the Western world. So I believe we already are a step ahead in design. Manufacturing, still not there. Services is a big area which I think in the ecosystem development that still has a lot of scope to, to grow in.
Thanks so much. Nambi, your thoughts?
Yeah, probably I would echo what Amit said. We can't bring a global product into Indian market. It's not going to work. And so we need to design and develop the product for Indian market. The product what we sell in India exclusively designed for India with the frugal in mind. The second is how do you adapt to the Indian conditions? You are going to have all kind of a vague requirements. For example, when I was talking to one OE, one of the requirement was like, can we detect somebody sleeping under the track? So you park the car, where you park the track and somebody is sleeping, can your radar detect it? Or the product what you are going to design can withstand Mumbai or Chennai floods. It's going to be very interesting. I mean, if you are going to talk to the OEs or the tier 1 suppliers, how do you adapt to the Indian conditions? And you bring all the features into your controller or the product what you design, but at much lesser cost. See, there are, I mean, I used to joke with my colleagues, like, if you're in automotive industry, it's like, you are at a very cost-sensitive area. Unlike mobile phone manufacturers or the Ashok, chip manufacturers, they're at much higher Y. But automotive industry is pretty cost-sensitive. So each and every part you design, each and every thought you put in together, it has to be optimum, highly cost-competitive nature. That is going to be a big challenge. It's not just ideas. We can't bring in the apps running in a mobile phone into the controller. No, you can't. How do you make it most cost-effective? We do have our intellectual properties. We do have people. So how does the ecosystem can support it? But that is going to be the key thing which we need to address as we go along if we want to really scale up in what we are doing it.
Thanks a lot. So I think fabbing of chips become an important aspect. We're seeing the mobile space changing significantly. 7 lakh phones are sold every year. We still don't have the kind of local chip manufacturing there at that kind of volume. So I think it needs to start from industries that already have that volume, and then use the surplus capacity to start looking at industries that are probably going to have low volumes to look at this aspect. But taking this to the next level of understanding the point that was discussed earlier, that are you designing for SOP or start of production, or are you designing for the end of life? And I think that India can do a lot where the future architectures, if they are very flexible, will enable designing once but reusing it, and having the capability and a hardware and a software upgradable over the product life. This would mean that you have to rethink cars in a different way, but it would give a large opportunity to the entire industry to look at this and give consumers products that are more relevant to where we are. And I think one of the points we talked about at the during lunch was the fact that even you buy a very expensive, $100,000 car here or abroad, you never end up using the navigation system from that car. You end up using something off your phone. So it's kind of a challenge that today by the time product comes out, it becomes irrelevant. So India has a large opportunity since its software side. When I think of flexibility and I think of open architecture, what are your thoughts as you see adoption of this philosophy within the industry and the opportunities on that? Maybe we'll start with you, Amit, since you brought this up as part of your thought process.
Yeah, so it's very, very, very important to actually design for India. And I'll just give you it's all about the value that gets perceived by the end consumers. Let me start from there. So, if I were to give an example, we did a survey or a market research a few years back, and we were trying to study in an instrument cluster, what's the actual perceived value by the customer? Like you do have the speedometer, which is important. You do have fuel, which is important. And then when we really asked them, like you also have a temperature gauge. Yeah, that's always stuck there in the middle. It doesn't move this side, doesn't move there, it's always there. I really don't know what that does. And we really thought that what's more important in the Indian market is probably to just give an indication of whether the engine is hot or give them a warning, but you could reduce cost by just actually taking out, that entire mechanism that you have there. So such changes that are important for India in order to really study what the market here needs. And I guess second, from the perspective that how do you really design to adapt? So we see OEMs look at it today and say that, okay, these are the phones that are out there, I need seamless connectivity, and that's it. But what's really important, and as I said, the consumer electronics industry is changing so fast that you really need to make sure that you are actually designing to adapt. So you cannot design for end of life. What you need to do is you need to design to adapt. And what does it mean to design to adapt? It means that you basically have to move to open source architectures. And when you move to open source architecture,